My name is Jason Trook, and this is my faith story. I am an assistant principal at Coronado High School here in Lubbock. I'm also a Sunday school teacher here at the church. When I was in the 4th grade, my family went to a revival that was held at our church in Amarillo. And the preacher that spoke during the revival, who was actually a member of our church, had been there for many years. I'd known him for a long time. He was a semi-professional wrestler who had retired and become an evangelist. And as a young kid, I thought he was the coolest person in the world. He had this ring that he wore, and he would put his ring out and you would touch it and it made a noise, which I found out later came from his mouth, not his ring. But I really looked up to him, and I thought he was amazing. And then he preached, and his testimony was very powerful. It was incredible. He talked about how he physically was held down by God, how he was trying to not do what God had called him to do, and God basically told him, "I have a plan for you," and he had this physical encounter with God. And as a 10-year-old, that was mind-blowing to me. But I also started to kind of understand what was happening, what Jesus was calling me to do. And that was to make a decision to follow him. One night when we were done with the service and we were at home and I'd already gone to bed, I couldn't sleep. I had these questions, and so I got up and went to my parents' room, and I nudged my dad and I said, "Hey, I wanted to have some questions about salvation and about Jesus, about what Tommy was talking about in the service." And my dad said, "Well, it's late. Well, we can talk about it in the morning." So I went back to bed, didn't think anything of it really. And then 10, 15 minutes later, my dad comes into my room and said, I've been laying in bed and God has just been tugging at my heart that we need to talk about this now. And so we did. We sat in my room and we talked about sin and salvation and all the things that I knew in my head from being in Sunday school and being a part of RAs and all of the activities, but hadn't felt that call from the Spirit. And so then as he was explaining those things, everything started to kind of make more sense to me. And so there in my room, late at night with my dad, I prayed and asked Jesus to be my Savior, to come and live in my heart and to forgive me of my sins. And that next Sunday morning, we were at church, and I didn't think the altar call was ever going to come. I sat anxious through the service, waiting for the time where I could go up to the front and tell everybody that I had made a decision to follow Jesus. And it was impactful, not because I lived such a awful life the first 9 years of my life, and then after that I turned a corner, but because that decision when I was 10 impacted who I became and who I am now. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I found my student Bible that in the back in my, I think I got it when I went into high school. I was like 13. I wrote like my birthday and my salvation day in the back of the Bible. I was like,